Welcome, everyone. Excited to have Jennifer Renshaw with us today. Jennifer is the founder and CEO of Brandmark Digital, a Nashville-based woman-owned digital marketing agency that's helping businesses turn their marketing spend into measurable growth. She's also a former president of Nashville chapter of the American Marketing Association and a passionate advocate for data-driven strategy, marketing automation, and AI in a small business. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. So let's start with your journey. What inspired you to launch Brandmark Digital, and how did your background in healthcare and tech marketing shape your approach?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. I was working for a tech startup and we luckily sold and didn't exit and everything. And so we relaunched our brand or our product under the new company's brand about 6 months after they had acquired us. And that happened on a Tuesday. And then on Friday, they laid off our whole team. And I was like, okay, well, that wasn't necessarily on the plan. We'll roll with that. And I was like, I've always talked about having my own agency and what would it be like if I actually got to call the shots and everything. And so I was like, this is the time. This is exactly what I needed to force me to do this. And so I had been in that type of environment already, the startup side of things, and loved it and just fell in love with that whole idea of creating something on your own and really turning it into what your vision was. So that's where I started Brainmark Digital in order to really help support other people who were directors of marketing in health tech companies like I had been. And so I was like, okay, I feel like I have a pretty good picture of what they all need. So let me create what they need and provide that to them. And so that's kind of how Brainmark Digital was created, and that was back in 2019.
What a ride, huh? Even just before the coronavirus.
It was quite a ride. Actually, COVID hit just before we even turned one. And I had hired my first employee about 15 days before the world shut down. So that one was probably even wilder. That was I called her and just said, okay, buckle up, grab a helmet. I don't know what's about to happen here, but we're going on a ride. And we sure have.
Definitely. All right. So you mentioned in our preparatory call that you need somebody with with that expertise still to know what to even prompt it to do it. How do you see the role of human strategy evolving in AI-driven marketing world?
Yeah, I think the human component is just becoming more and more clearly needed and necessary, especially strategically. So when everyone complains about the AI slop that's being generated and all of the you can't trust it and it doesn't give you the good outputs that you're looking for and all of those things, my response is usually what was your prompt? How were you prompting it and why did you prompt it that way? And we can usually get to the root cause of all of that within 2 minutes if they start answering those questions honestly. And so I think the biggest thing is that you need somebody who still has the knowledge behind what your end goal is, right? So if you're in marketing, for example, and you still have to have someone who understands SEO. You still have to have someone that understands content generation or social or any of those things. And if you don't, you're setting it up for failure from the start. But also, you still have to have that person who's running it and driving that strategy. Otherwise, it's the same thing as having an intern come in and say, go do all of our marketing. Just do it. And they have zero idea of what that means. Like, where do we need to go from here? What strategies do we need to use? How are we measuring all of that? What does success look like? And if you can't define all of those things up front and even feed that into your systems, it's not going to help you correctly. You're right. Like, you are going to get terrible output from your AI tools that are supposed to be superhumans and everything. So I think it just speaks to having knowledge and understanding of what the tool is capable of, but more so having the knowledge and understanding of your industry, your background, your what you need to be doing within your role to make it successful, and how do you align that with the overall business strategy too.
Nice, very nice. Many business struggle with inconsistent lead generation. What are some of the most common mistakes you see companies making when they try to build a reliable pipeline?
Yeah, I think I see 2 still that are surprising to me and that I thought would have been resolved by now, but are still extremely common. The first one is not having anything set up for tracking. So they'll even have KPIs, maybe. Some of them will have, our salespeople do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, how are you keeping track of that though? Like their follow up and everything. I'm not, or like it's whatever they tell me in our weekly meeting.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that there's no way that that can be accurate. You don't know that that's true. Like, how are we really tracking this to be able to have some actionable insights that are data driven? And so that's the first one that I still see people not putting in place the processes that actually align with what their KPIs are and how they should be tracking things. And then the
Mhm.
second one is just not automating follow up or using multiple channels or touch points. So I am still seeing people who are relying fully on sales reps who are manually doing every bit of outreach, whether that be sending a one off email, calling, texting, reaching out via LinkedIn, sending an email, any of those steps, and they aren't automating a single one of them. And typically, what we'll find is the right mix comes about when you have all of these combining together to make one big engine. And so if you haven't automated an immediate follow-up from an inquiry or, an immediate find this person on LinkedIn, connect with them, send them this message, and you aren't hitting them at those touch points from different channels. As we all know, everyone uses different channels and communicates best through different channels. And so if you aren't automating some of that, you are leaving so much more manual work, lost time, lost energy, everything on those people who are doing your follow-ups that really shouldn't be happening, right? So they should be automatically enrolled in a drip campaign as soon as they reach out about whatever their pain point is. And maybe you have multiple things that can address that pain point, and you should be delivering to them regularly through multiple channels what those different strategies or solutions are, and then presenting those consistently throughout that sales process.
Yeah, I think so. The next question goes a little bit on what you have touched as well. You emphasize data-driven strategy and marketing automation. So, can you walk us through your process when a client comes to you saying we're not getting enough leads?
Absolutely. So typically, what we will do is first start with how are they being captured? And a lot of times, that right there is the problem is that they either aren't capturing them or don't have it set up to where they're capturing them effectively or efficiently, or don't have them as part of an automated program or anything like that. And so we just go through like, what are your qualifications? Like, what is your criteria for what qualifies a lead? How are we scoring those? And a lot of times, what we uncover is not the lack of leads being generated so much as reaching out to the wrong and unqualified ones. And so we tend to focus on that a lot too of how do we go back and make sure that we're refining the criteria to ensure we are only reaching out to those who are highly qualified, who are a high fit. And then what do we do with the other outreach that isn't necessarily going to make a good lead for us? Do we have an automatic program where we refer them out to a strategic partner or something like that? And a lot of times what they find is just that they were wasting too much time on ones that were never the right fit to start with. And so we use that data in order to prove that concept and go from there. And what we
Mhm.
learn throughout using the data then informs what our strategy needs to be moving forward as well. So once we have everything in place to be able to say, like, here were the sources of where these people
Mhm.
were coming from. This was the messaging that was actually resonating. These are the pain points that we're truly addressing. And when we build that out into a foundation of a dashboard and a way of reporting on that, that's when we really see the magic happen, as we like to say.
Nice. And you have worked across B2B and B2C industries, from
Mhm.
healthcare to consumer goods. What
Yep.
pattern have you noticed in how different sectors approach to lead generation, if any?
Yes, so there are some big differences, I think, between B2B and B2C. So typically B2B, especially on the services side of things, you're looking at longer sales cycles, higher touch points, more relationships, more built on trust and thought leadership and expertise and service. And so the way that people address those tools is very different than a lot of the B2C side. And what we found too is that, so for example, we're a HubSpot partner. HubSpot is a great marketing automation tool and one that I don't typically recommend for B2C at all because of the structure of its how it is, how its licensing works and number of contacts and that's how they're charging. And so it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense for a B2C company that's actually trying to drive as many as possible. They're really playing on economies of scale there. They want as many people through as possible, not
Mhm.
necessarily as few highly qualified. And so whenever you look at those two different approaches, those are two different marketing automation tools that you're talking about that you would want to use in those instances. And so we usually go back to the drawing board on what are your requirements? Like how is your business structured? What makes the most sense for your team and how to use this tool? And we go about making recommendations that way.
And I understand you have helped clients implement tools like HubSpot and Pardot.
Mhm.
What's your take on how CRM and marketing automation platforms are evolving with AI? And what should founders be cautious about?
Yeah, I think they still have a little ways to go. They aren't obviously caught up to the LLMs in terms of
Mhm.
complexity or being as reliable even, but almost all of them now have built-in AI features, right? So I would say start with just using those. Start you trying them out, seeing how they function. I really love the prepare button within HubSpot for all of your upcoming meetings for the day. And it basically just
Mhm.
summarizes like, here are your past interactions with this person. And here's probably what this is about based on your previous emails, what's in the calendar invite, whatever it may be. But it just sort of puts you in the right frame of mind for getting on that call or prepping something. And that's my first place to dabble. I think because it's integrated into the system, because it's already built within the tool that you're already in every day, you want to use AI within what you're already doing, right? The
Mhm.
biggest barrier a lot of times to using AI is that, oh, I've got to go to another tab, to a different system, go log in somewhere else, give it all of this context. If you're using the AI directly within your marketing automation tool, however, it already has that context. It already knows a lot of that information. And so you're already a leg up. But I mean, they are coming out with new features and functionality that are AI driven all the time that really
Okay.
play to their strengths. I know I heard the VP of product for HubSpot, and this was probably 2 years ago now, who said, I think our most used AI functionality within our product is the automatic email subject line generator.
Hmm.
And he was like, gets used more than any other feature by far. because it's the one that people understand and are using the most within their current process, right? And so
Hmm.
just finding those opportunities within your current process of things that have been built in and start tooling around that way. Start trying things out. See what kind of results you're getting. And obviously, you need to review what those are and push it harder. So if it's giving you something and you're like, that's not right, don't just cast off it with that's not right and go over to a different LLM or whatever. Give it the feedback it needs so it can get better because it will actually learn and understand and grow as you are teaching it. So every time you give it an instruction isn't just a one off. It is truly training the models so that they are doing better in the future with what you're asking.
And in your experience, how can founders better align their marketing and sales teams to improve lead quality and conversion?
Yeah, sales and marketing alignment has been a struggle for businesses probably since the beginning of time.
Yes.
We hear that more than anything. It's like, well, our sales and marketing teams just aren't on the same page. So getting them to align is huge. And it starts at the top. This is not a technical answer by any stretch. It is your head of sales and your head of marketing need to be functioning on the same page and understanding where they can support each other. And I say that because so often we hear marketing, you're there to support sales.
Mhm.
That's not a closed loop, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
in order for marketing to support sales best, sales also has to support marketing. They have to follow up on time with those leads that they're giving them. They have to give them the feedback of here's who's being qualified, here's who's coming through, and this is who we are finding as our ideal client. And let's do more of these things that we've seen so much success with. And the only way we know that also is by tracking that data.
Mhm.
But what we want to see is that open loop of discussion, especially between leadership that's giving feedback constantly and helping each other. Because at the end of the day, you want to have the support of both sides, right? And both
Mhm.
sides are only successful if the other one is. And so the not being in alignment causes more pain, I would say, for everyone than just one side. It's really a push and pull constantly type of relationship that you really need to spend time building and cultivating what that relationship really is with those teams.
Very nice. And looking ahead to Q3 and beyond, what trends or signals are you watching closely in the marketing space, especially around AI, buyer behavior, or content strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, we're paying really close attention to obviously to like what all of the models are doing and what those outputs are, and then how was AI being used within CRM and within marketing automation tools and woven into all of these other tools as well. And where do we see we try to focus on where's the opportunity. I know a lot of people, especially in the marketing space, are terrified um, and I just kind of come from the mindset that if we're terrified, then no good can come from that, right? You are
Mhm.
only going to be as successful as what opportunity you see in front of you. And so if we're looking at it from that lens, we are functioning on our best for our own teams. And so where do we see opportunity? Where can we find, here's an amazing tool. Great. There are so many amazing tools. We focus on how do we get these teams to adopt those tools and actually infuse them within their processes. So there is a change management is a huge component within that I think gets lost a lot. And a lot of people focus more on features and functionality instead of the how do we actually change behavior on the team and for the humans who are in this loop, how do we
Mhm.
change their behavior and put their minds at ease and show they still have value? And a lot of times, what I will do, at least for people who are in the trenches is let's start with a use case where what's the thing you absolutely hate doing the most? Let's remove that from your plate, right? If we need
Mm-hmm.
buy in on AI, we have to make sure we're connecting with that person and addressing what their biggest pain point is. So, like, their biggest pain point a lot of times isn't lead generation or lead quality or whatever. A lot of times it's going to be, I hate doing this administrative task and it takes me half of the time when in reality, I want to be doing amazing design or I want to be doing, strategic thinking and presenting, not, going through and making all of these documents and blah, blah, blah. Okay, perfect. Let's start there. How do we get you to work on what you are best at and what drives you more frequently and take the things off your plate that you don't want to be doing? Let's start there. And that
Mm-hmm.
seems to work really well with people in the trenches and getting them bought in and on board with everything. Whereas if you're talking about leadership level, that's obviously going to be a much more strategic, higher level conversation. But it can also speak to, well, your people down here in the trenches are spending 30% of their time doing this ridiculous administrative task that they don't need to be doing. Like, let's have them focus on what their skill sets really are. And
Mm-hmm.
then they're listening because they can see that there is an ROI in that. And they know that. And I mean, we have models that show all of that as well, but they can really see where the effect is.
And I understand you have led a successful rebrand for Quorum Health Resources and help startups like Charcoal Cowboys launch. What makes a brand story resonate in today's crowded digital landscape?
It's all about the story and how compelling it is and how much it really pulls on the heartstrings a lot. What we find over and over again is that people are irrational human beings, and at the end of the day, they make purchase decisions based on emotion and feels, not necessarily,
Mhm.
and a lot of times vibes. I hear vibes a lot these days, but they truly make decisions based on that. And so we have to speak to, and we can always use data to prove all of these things. Yes. And we do
Mhm.
it in testing and everything. Like, what is the portion of the story that really tugs on those heartstrings and creates that emotional bond with the brand and the person to where they have the inherent trust in it and know it's there to support them and serve them well. And a lot of times that's done through the feel goods. It's done through the social impact or things like that that are the non-tangibles or what a lot of people see as a cost item on the
Mhm.
P&L, but in reality, it's their brand and it's what drives the consumer behavior of purchasing from their brand. And so being aware of that, I think, is huge. I've seen a lot of, especially social impact, canceled in the last year, 2 years, just from economic pressure, markets, that kind of thing. And it's been deteriorating a lot of brand stories. And I think that they need to be a lot more cognizant of, okay, this may look like a cost item on our P&L. However, what's the cost of us not doing it? And a lot of times it's much higher than the cost of actually doing it.
For founders listening who are trying to get their marketing to click, what's one piece of advice you'll give them to start building a more consistent and scalable lead engine?
Start with a system. You've got to start with a system. And honestly, I talk to people all the time that their system is an Excel spreadsheet, but you've got to have a system and a process. And if you don't have that, you don't even know where to begin from implementing tools and technology.
Mhm.
So until you've established what that process looks like, what is your ideal state, and how do we really make this happen on the back end? In other words, manually first. We have to know manually what has to happen before we can automate anything that happens or use technology to make it happen. And so starting with what is the system and mapping out what that process is always step one. And we
Well,
start
thank
with
you.
the end in
Mhm.
mind when doing that too.
Mhm.
So just to clarify, like anytime we're building out those systems, like, okay, let's start with what are the end KPIs we're trying to get to? And we build that system backwards from there. So, like, what are the data points that are driving this? And how do we measure success? Because ultimately, that's how we're going to build the system. I think that's why it surprises me so much when people are still like, I don't know, I can't really track what my salespeople are doing. And I'm like, you didn't build this system with knowing what your KPIs were so that they were able to be tracked within the system? Nope, didn't even think about it. All right, let's go back to that.
Nice. Well, thank you, Jennifer. That was incredibly insightful. I appreciate your openness and example, especially around how you're helping business to cut through the noise and build real sustainable growth. Thank you for your time. Any last statement you want to tell the audience?
I mean, just go experiment, go play around, don't be fearful. We're only afraid of what we don't know. And so if the more you get to know the AI and the technology, the more powerful of a tool it really is. And you can gain back your power through knowledge. So get to know it and understand it, and you will be amazed at what else you can do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.